I was living in this little community south of San Diego, National City, no art going on, so I was pretty much isolated. So I guess my attitude was that I can do anything I want because nobody cares, and I'm not going to show anything to anybody. The life I could see ahead of me was probably teaching, when I was teaching in public schools, and maybe, doing art on weekends, painting on weekends. My life changed, but at the moment when I was doing these early works, again, leaving painting, I think my motivation was sort of that if the kind of art that's going on confuses people, and the usual complaint would be, my kid can do that, what would happen if you really just try to communicate the language of the realm, so that might be, print. People read, newspapers or magazines, and they have cameras, so maybe photographs. So the early works were texts and photo pieces with that idea in mind. I don't think anybody, including myself, saw themselves as photographers. They just thought it as another tool, like a paintbrush or a chisel or whatever. And I think that made a lot of difference. And I think the world saw photography somewhat apart from art. I would go to the library and there would be books on the history of art, and there would be books on the history of photography. They were two kind of separate things. When I decided to be more available to people, I said, well, people have cameras, they probably can understand that, so I will use photographs. I didn't get interested in doing films until 1970, and I started to do films and video like a lot of artists. I was using a camera pretty much like a real estate agent, photographing a house for sale. They're not trying to make art, they're just recording something. I think my motivation was communication, that art was a dialogue. It was not something that an artist did. I really wanted to communicate with people, and I thought, well, they read newspapers and magazines. That's the means that's used. Why don't I do the same thing? I think any artist has to know the history of art, so it's certainly about that. I do believe art comes out of art, and nobody is original. These recent things, basically what I'm doing, I'm using photographic images from the history of art rather than photographic images from culture, newspapers and magazines and movies. But I'm going about it the same way. And these pieces you see behind you in the wall, they're just I'm mashing two artists together and making one artist out of them. And I give you one artist's name, and you have to think of who the other artist is. So they're kind of like little art history tests, I suppose. I think information for art comes from everywhere. It's not predictable. It could be a passing comment you hear, or something you read, or something you look at, whatever. I would say that if you want to be an artist, you shouldn't reinvent the wheel, but maybe that's not good. A lot of people reinvent the wheel and do very well. So I don't even know if that's good advice. I hope, people's idea of living a life is doing what they want to do and have to do. That's not, some people don't get that opportunity, but I have had that opportunity. I'm not the kind of person that makes a rational decision like I'm going to be a lawyer or a doctor. I did do that at first, and I ended up doing things I didn't like. So I'm doing art because that's where I ended up. It wasn't a rational decision, it was sort of the end of the line. Rational thought, irrational thought, they're interlinked. One informs the other. It helps if you can know the distinction between the two. If you don't, then I guess you're in trouble. One of my definitions of artists were, a good artist is a functional crazy person. And what does that say about rationality? They're functional, that's rational, and they're intuitive, they're crazy. I think I'm obsessed. I cannot not do art.